Queen Orinthia's chamber trembled as alarms shrieked. The Aurelian Pulse, the Empire's weapon of gods, faltered. Lights flickered, the hum of power wavered, and the sages' faces twisted in panic. They had studied its mechanics for centuries, yet now it defied them. Orinthia clenched her jaw. Failure was forbidden. Outside, the capital of Valeria burned with quiet inevitability. Trade ships grounded, sky lanes choked with drifting wreckage. The Pulse had been their ultimate deterrent, their guarantee of dominance. Now it was dying, and with it, the Empire. Ramsey mopped the council hall floors, his human hands aching, his mind racing. Once he had been a Terran engineer, trained in technologies long forgotten by Valeria. Now he was invisible, a shadow among the gilded rulers, unnoticed. That invisibility was about to become his weapon. A sage barked at him, oblivious to the irony. "We need the Pulse stabilized. You, Janitor, fetch the containment rods." Ramsey's lips twitched. He took the rods without a word, feeling the pulse of alien energy beneath his fingertips. This was not magic. This was science, and he understood it. He ducked into the hall's maintenance tunnels, where the old circuits hummed with dying life. His mind raced, recalculating flow rates, realigning harmonics. A misstep here meant annihilation, not just of the city, but of billions. Outside, the Empire's fleet awaited. Engines charged, trust placed in a weapon that could not answer. Ramsey's hands danced over the alien interface. Numbers blurred. Flow equations clashed. The Pulse writhed like a caged storm. He imagined Terran reactors, fusion cores, magnetic coils. Then it clicked. The solution had always been human logic, simple, direct, unclouded by tradition. "Containment stable," he muttered. Pulse synchronized. A tremor shook the tunnels, a wave of energy that could have torn walls apart. The sages screamed as Ramsey emerged into the chamber. Their eyes widened. The Janitor had done what they could not. Orinthia approached, her expression unreadable. "Explain," she demanded. Ramsey's voice was calm. "You rely on ritual and awe. The Pulse listens to reason, logic, adaptation. I restored what you failed to comprehend." The Queen studied him, then slowly nodded. Around them, the Pulse roared to life. Beams of golden energy stitched through the skies, stabilizing shields, rebooting defenses, igniting hope. The Empire had survived, not because of centuries of knowledge, but because one human remembered how to think. Outside, the citizens glimpsed the Pulse's light, felt the winds shift, and somewhere deep in the void, enemies reconsidered. Humans, it seemed, were more than fragile flesh. They were problem solvers, survivors, masters of adaptation. And in that moment, Valeria learned what it meant to rely on a human. The Aurelian Pulse stabilized, but peace did not follow. Orinthia's council erupted in chaos. Sages argued, pointing fingers, blaming each other for the near collapse. Ramsey stood aside, silent. He knew their fear ran deeper than logic. They had worshipped a weapon they could no longer control. A sudden tremor shook the hall. Floor panels cracked underfoot. Outside, Valeria's skies flared as unknown ships warped into orbit. They were not Terran. Their shapes were jagged, alien, weapons bristling like predatory teeth. The sages froze. Orinthia's hand went to her jeweled hilt. "They are here," she said, her voice steel. "The Ascaran fleet." Ramsey's eyes narrowed. He had studied alien propulsion before being demoted to Janitor. Ascaran ships relied on pulse harmonics. The same principle as the Aurelian Pulse. If they intercepted it, Valeria would burn from within. Orinthia's advisors panicked, but Ramsey stepped forward. "Let me interface," he said. "I can manipulate the pulse field. Redirect it defensively." The sages laughed. "A human? Against the fleet?" Ramsey ignored them. He raced to the control dais, ignoring alarms and sparks. Every second mattered. Outside, the first Ascaran fighter tore through a shield turret, scattering molten fragments into orbit. Civilians screamed. Defense drones scrambled, but their targeting systems overloaded. Ramsey reached the core interface. His fingers danced across alien glyphs and Terran circuitry, merging patterns in real time. A massive energy wave surged from the Pulse, but it went wild. Ramsey's vision blurred as feedback burned across the console. He adjusted instantly, twisting flow harmonics like a maestro conducting a symphony. The wave split, shielding the city, and reflected outward, striking an incoming Ascaran cruiser. Explosions rippled across the fleet. The sages gaped. Orinthia's eyes widened. One human had done what decades of training and rituals could not: understand, adapt, and act. But the danger was far from over. A secondary fleet emerged, cloaked, slipping past sensors. Ramsey felt their energy signatures. Cold, calculating, predatory. They were smarter than the first wave. If he misjudged, the pulse could implode. He breathed, calibrating on instinct and logic alone. Ancient machinery hummed beneath his hands, thrumming with life as if it recognized a mind capable of reason. Pulse output spiked, energy barriers rippled outward, cutting the cloaked ships from stealth. The sky lit with sudden blinding gold. Orinthia whispered, almost in disbelief. "This is human ingenuity." Ramsey smiled, sweat dripping from his brow. The Askaran ships retreated, but their message was clear. Valeria had survived this day, not through ritual, not through gods, but because one human refused to fail. Outside, citizens cheered, watching the light dance across the horizon. Somewhere deep in the void, the Askaran recalculated their strategies. One fact was undeniable: humans. The Askaran fleet retreated, but Ramsey knew it was only a temporary reprieve. Valeria's defenses were bruised, shields flickering, and the pulse core was overheating. Every second wasted risked catastrophic failure. Orinthia paced in the chamber, her jeweled boots clicking against marble. "They will return, stronger, smarter," she muttered. The sages stared at Ramsey, their faces a mix of awe and fear. They had relied on tradition, worship, and ceremony. One human had exposed their weakness. Ramsey ignored their stares. He sprinted through the corridors, scanning control consoles. The pulse emitted faint pulses of instability, like a heart racing before collapse. He tapped into auxiliary systems, rerouting power through redundant circuits he remembered from Terran engineering manuals. Sparks flew. The air smelled of ozone. Then alarms blared again. Not Askaran ships, something worse. The core itself roared like a wounded beast. Energy fluctuations tore through the chamber walls. The sages screamed, scrambling for safety. Orinthia barely stayed upright, her eyes locked on Ramsey. "I need manual access," Ramsey shouted over the chaos. He leapt into the containment pit, where the pulse's raw energy seared metal and air alike. His hands gripped conduits designed to melt flesh on contact. He didn't flinch. Humans could adapt. Humans could endure. He reconfigured harmonics, bending the pulse to respond to instinct, not ritual. Light twisted violently, forming golden arcs above the city. Buildings shook. Windows shattered. Citizens screamed. Yet Ramsey worked faster, calculating, improvising, thinking in ways the sages never could. Suddenly the pulse stabilized, but not completely. A fissure appeared in the energy lattice. If it widened, Valeria would implode. Ramsey's mind raced. He pulled a memory from Terran fusion designs and combined it with the alien matrix. The fissure sealed with a violent flash. Sparks rained. Smoke swirled. Silence followed. Orinthia stepped forward. "You saved us again," she said, voice trembling. "How?" Ramsey wiped sweat from his brow. "You taught me fear, tradition, and caution. But humans thrive on adaptation, on action when rules fail. That is what kept this city alive." He looked to the skies. The Askaran would not forget this day. They would return, perhaps with a fleet 10 times larger. But Valeria had learned a new truth. One human mind could outthink entire civilizations. One human could turn a weapon of gods into a tool of survival. Outside, golden light bathed the city. Civilians watched the spectacle, hearts pounding with newfound hope. Somewhere in the void, alien sensors marked Ramsey's ingenuity, calculating, reevaluating, underestimating. Humans would be the galaxy's deadliest mistake, and Ramsey, a janitor by title but a savior by choice, prepared. The fight was far from over.